Hola, buenas noches. Tonight's class was divided into two parts. So in the first part before the break, we focused on practicing our numbers. So your homework over the weekend was to go through page 40 in your book and study as much as you can. Just familiarize yourself with those numbers. We read through them together as a class to just get more practice with the pronunciation, but definitely not enough to have learned all of the numbers from 1 to 100 if there was no prior studying or anything. But just a quick review. And then we did a couple activities. One of them was a bingo game. So those bingo cards in the back of your packet, we went through and practiced just reading the numbers, identifying them. We also went through and wrote down the numbers as I read them aloud, just to continue practicing and making sure that you have that familiarity and that kind of quickness with the numbers. So if you need to study that more, I posted in the Facebook group a video that is numbers from 1 to 100 in Spanish. It's about 4 minutes long. So that would be a good thing to kind of just run through a couple times, even playing it in the background and repeating after it. And then just make sure that you have those flashcards and that you're studying those numbers. We are going to be getting some more practice in kind of a role play restaurant scenario tomorrow, which will involve numbers as well. So if you haven't gotten a chance to study that much over the weekend, make sure you do review those before tomorrow's class. And then the second half of our class, we talked about irregular verbs. So last week on Thursday, we talked about the verb poder, which is one of our irregular verbs, and got a little more practice asking different things. Puedes o no puedes, can you do this, can you do that? And getting that communication practice with our partner. Today, we read in the book a little bit more of an overview of irregular verbs. So you can do that on your own. It is on page 70 of the book. It's the beginning of chapter 6. And just kind of, it is a little bit of information overload, but we'll give you kind of just an overview of different stem changing verbs. It groups them into different categories. So in that way, you're able to kind of start picking up patterns and just start kind of memorizing which verbs change in which ways. And then we did a little activity together with some of our more common irregular verbs. I'll show you here. So this is kind of how we're going to approach irregular verbs going forward. So don't get too overwhelmed when you read that section of the book and it's just kind of like a bunch of verbs all at once. Again, you're not expected to memorize that. It's just sort of to give you a deeper understanding of how Spanish works and just kind of give you the overview before you start studying the specifics and really going for that fluency and memorization. So these are the three verbs that we talked about tonight. One is poder again. So we talked about that last week and we just did a quick review of it. We read through all of the conjugations together. So yo puedo, tú puedes, él puede, ella puede, usted puede, ellos pueden, y nosotros podemos. And then in your packet on page 15, we started writing some sentences with the verb poder. So you can get more familiarity with it, more practice, and you're going to write one thing that you can do. So lots of activity, lots of practice with that from last week's activity, if you can remember any of those, or really any verb. But remember, you're not going to conjugate two verbs that are next to each other. So you're going to use it in that infinitive or AR, ER, or IR version when you say it after puedo. So if I'm saying, yo puedo nadar, I can swim, I'm going to use nadar, the full AR form of the verb. And then something I can't do. Yo no puedo correr. I can't run, okay? So you're going to choose any verb here and make sure that you do this activity because we are going to start off tomorrow's class with this activity with our partner. So make sure you do have it done. It shouldn't take you too long. The next verb that we looked at for the activity was tener, to have. So same thing here. We went through all the different conjugations. Yo tengo, tú tienes, él tiene, ella tiene, usted tiene, ellos tienen, nosotros tenemos. And wrote our own sample sentences here. So one thing you have, yo tengo, and one thing you do not have, yo no tengo. Just a reminder here that you're probably going to be using the indefinite article. So that's un or una. If you're saying I have one thing, whatever that object might be. So for example, yo tengo un libro. Or you can use a number there too if you have multiple of the same thing. Yo tengo dos libros, or whatever you want to put in there that's relative to your life. All right, our last verb that we looked at today was querer, which means to want. For today's purposes, we're just going to be looking at this meaning. I did also mention in class that there's another meaning of querer, which means I love you, but in a non-romantic way. So in Spanish, there are two verbs that mean to love. One is more of a platonic, friends and family kind of love, and one is a romantic love. So querer is also used for that, but for today's purposes, we're going to use it to mean to want. So we have yo quiero, tú quieres, él quiere, ella quiere, usted quiere, ellos quieren, nosotros queremos. And here you're going to write one sentence using quiero, yo quiero, something that you want. Again, you're probably going to be using the indefinite article here, so un or una, unless you want multiple of this thing. And then yo no quiero with one thing that you do not want. And we will start off there in tomorrow's class. So that's it for tonight, and buenas noches.